On behalf of Superintendent Marianne O'Donnell, Morgan Principal Carrie Hagnes, and the Morgan Political Club, welcome to tonight's 2018 Connecticut District 35 General Assembly and Connecticut District 33 Senate debates. I'm Caleb Adams-Holt, and this is Dan Radka. We will act as moderators for tonight's debates. Other student participants include Sarah Aletta and Ella Franzoni. State and Senate debate. Just to quickly reiterate the rules and format of the debates, candidates will begin with a 90-second opening statement. From then, the candidates will be given 90 seconds to respond to each question and a 30-second rebuttal time if necessary. At the end of the debate, each candidate will then have the opportunity to give a 90-second closing statement. We again ask candidates to remain respectful to one another throughout the debate. So we're going to begin with our opening statements, and the winner of our coin flip is Mr. Neddleman, who will be starting for us.
Thank you, guys. You know that we had another high school debate, and we're grading you on this, comparing you to Colchester. I'm Norm Neddleman, and I'm here tonight to discuss the issues that are important to our district. Those of you who don't know me may be surprised by some of the things you hear. For instance, my opponent and I will likely agree that Hartford is a mess, and that the budget process needs to be fixed. We will agree that a constant stream of ill-conceived mandates places unnecessary burdens on our towns and businesses. And we will agree that ever-diminishing state support for vital services in our town must be reversed. But in important ways, my opponent and I couldn't be more different. For starters, I can talk about an actual record built on real-world result. Let's start with taxes. In Essex, where I've been first selectman for over 7 years, taxes are lower than 90% of the towns in the state. And this year, we actually lowered our mill rate. How about budget development and management? Budgets have been developed with overwhelming support by voters every year I've been in office, and every year the budget has been balanced. Job creation and economic development. Our small town is home to over 700 businesses. One of them is the manufacturing company I built, which employs over 150 people right here in this district. Those accomplishments are the reasons I won't have to resort to vague talking points. You won't hear evasive political phrases like stood with or met with.
We're going to have to cut you off right there, Mr. Neddleman. Thank you very much. And Ms. Ziobron?
Thank you very much, and thank you to the club for sponsoring this debate and all the work I'm sure that went into formulating the questions in the process tonight. Hi, my name is Melissa Ziobron. It's been my privilege to represent Colchester, East Haddam, East Hampton for the last 6 years in the House chamber. I'm a moderate Republican who is fiscally conservative and socially liberal. This means when the knives come out, I get it from both sides. Fun, right? Not really. I know trading barbs is something that comes with the job. Tonight, I'm here as much to listen as to talk. During the last 2 years as the minority party, our input into the budget process was instrumental. For the first time ever, a true bipartisan budget was formulated, and if not for the participation of that minority, meaning Republican intervention, today we would not have a constitutional spending cap. We wouldn't have over $1 billion in our rainy day fund, nor any check on the continually proposed Democrat tax increases, last year a half a dozen of them. What made this possible? Something fundamental to good governance, fair and equal party representation in our Senate. This seat, your Senate seat, is crucial to this balance. I want Connecticut to thrive, prosper, but more importantly, live within its means. We can turn our state around together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ziobron. And now for our first question. Balancing our state budget is one of the largest challenges you will face as a senator. How will you change the current approach to balancing the budget? What specific tax breaks, hikes, or incentives would you propose, and why would they be more effective than the current approach?
Thank you. Well, I've actually built budgets, lived by them, worked with people to get them approved unanimously for the last 5 years in Essex, and I'm proud of that record. Last budget cycle, the bipartisan budget, which I don't think it really was raised $1 billion worth of revenue, and it actually hurt all of our towns in this district while giving more money to Greenwich. I don't think that that was very fair. Melissa's going to talk a lot about the process of fixing it. I'm going to tell you that we're not going to cut our way out of this. We're not going to tax our way out of this. We have to have people in the legislature and in the executive branch who can actually grow an economy, know how to attract businesses, know how to make this state work for everybody that's here. And I think that I'm the person to do that.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Ziobron.
Thank you very much. One of the proposals I have consistently recommended is to change the budgeting process in Hartford. Unlike what you do at home, they start with spending, and they focus on spending for 4 months. And once they decide how much money they're going to spend, then they go to the Revenue Committee and decide how much revenue or taxes they're going to raise to meet that spending level. We can't keep doing it that way, which is why I have repeatedly at many of these forums talked about changing that process to a Ways and Means Committee so that we have our spending and our revenue within one committee, and we talk about, again, living within our means. I keep hearing all this stuff thrown out about how we cut local communities' budget in the bipartisan budget, but what you're not hearing is how Governor Malloy decimated 33 towns in the state of Connecticut, zeroing out their education cost sharing grants, zero. The new ECS formula is fair and balanced, and yes, there are 5% cuts to small communities, but that would have been nothing compared to what was supported from the Democrats and Governor Malloy's budget, which would have eliminated education cost sharing grants. Another thing I hear about often lately is Greenwich's aid. You should know Greenwich total budget is $420 million. The education cost sharing grant he's talking about was an extra $130,000, and it was because they have children there who don't speak English and need English as a second language support. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, we'd like to offer Mr. Neddleman an opportunity to rebut.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Greenwich did get more money, and Greenwich has a per capita grand list of 750,000. Essex has a per capita grand list of 120,000. This town has a per capita grand list probably of 75,000. They really didn't need the money. And I gotta say that I hated Dan Malloy's tactics of
And we're going to have to cut you
people.
right there, Mr. Neddleman. Sorry about that. Ms. Ziobron, your rebuttal?
Thank you. It wasn't easy for Republicans who have been, again, in the minority in the legislature for 38 years. 38 years. This past year, we delivered our budget proposals on time in April. The majority party didn't do that until August, totally outside of session. We stood in the room. We were committed to helping Connecticut, even though we didn't necessarily have the votes for all of our ideas. That is bipartisan work, and I'm proud to have led that effort on behalf of all of our residents to do what's right for all of our kids, no matter where they live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ziobron.
American students nationwide are burdened with student loans and debt from pursuing higher education. The average college graduate in Connecticut has over $35,000 in student loans. What are your plans to make college more affordable and student loans more manageable for Connecticut students? Yes, we're starting with Ms. Ziobron.
Thank you. So I have 2 children. My daughter Brittany graduated a few years ago from Seton Hall, and my son Brian is a sophomore at UConn. In fact, I was on campus this morning dropping him off after he voted by absentee ballot this morning at the town clerk's office. We do have a really serious crisis with the cost of tuition, but here's some things you should know. In our university system at UConn, we have the highest administrative costs literally in this area in New England. In fact, when you look at our unfunded pension liabilities, the top people who are collecting that pension, some over $300,000 a year, are former UConn staffers. We have to do a better job to decrease our administrative costs. We also have to be honest about the current tuition bill that is being paid. For instance, 18% of every tuition bill is set aside for scholarships. That means every time they raise tuition, they're still carving out almost 20% for another purpose. We need to make sure that when we have parents or students paying their tuition, that it's going to support their education, boots on the ground, teachers on the ground, professors on the ground, not higher administrative costs. We can do better than what we've been doing, and that would be one place I would begin to start. In addition, I supported a concept last year which created a $500 tax credit for kids who graduated with STEM degrees, and that was good for 5 years. We need to start doing more policies like that to keep our kids in Connecticut.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Mr. Needleman?
So I think that the budget that was passed cut $300 million from the state universities, threatened to close UConn at Avery Point, and actually was the cause of tuitions continually going up in the state. We need to keep our flagship university and the entire state university system affordable here. UConn now is a very expensive school for in and out of state students, and part of that is because we cut so much money from them. We are who we educate in the future, and if we don't make sure that we have a great college system here, a great public university system, our kids are going to be really left behind. I would never have signed on to a budget that cut that much money with the excuse of a few people who I agree should not have been paid as much, but Connecticut decided that they wanted the top basketball team in the country. So there are a few people who make more money than any educator, and as a result of that get pensions. But you call out a specific example as a reason to make massive cuts in a budget that wasn't fair for the kids going to school. I'm sorry that that's just not fair, and I don't think it's the way to balance the budget on the back of kids who look to get a good education in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Needleman. Ms. Shepherd, you're welcome.
Thank you. So you should know that there's some things that are happening at UConn that the average person might not be aware of. For instance, just recently, they unionized their graduate assistants. That caused a huge cost burden to the university. In fact, their chief financial officer talked a lot to us about the cost of the fringe benefits afforded to the state employees at UConn. You should know the fringe benefit rate is 97% of their salary. What does that mean? Somebody makes $100 grand, you're paying $97,000 of health care and fringe benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Mr. Needleman.
Once again, we have a situation where somebody is absolutely defining the exception as the rule. Most teachers who teach in this state, be they in public schools or at the university level, don't get those astounding pensions. And I honestly believe that you want to drive those people into having no retirement security. The state, the legislature that you're part of, did not put the money away. It's not that they negotiated in bad faith. They negotiated in good faith, and unfortunately, the legislature and the governors were not responsible, and that's what needs to change.
We're going to have to cut you off, Mr. Needleman. Thank you. So I think we can all agree that poverty and unemployment are a problem in Connecticut. What specifically would you do to eliminate poverty and create new job opportunities in the state? And why is this more effective than the plans of your opponent? Why is this more effective than the plans of your opponent?
So I'm an employer, and as I said, I employ about 250 people, 150 of them here. I run a town, one of the better towns in the state, in my opinion, humbly the best town in the state, but I love Essex, and I think we do a great job. We treat people fairly, and I believe that as an employer, we treat people fairly. That's one of the things that helps people become less of a burden on the state. I absolutely, at this point, support a gradual increase in the minimum wage. I know my opponent and most of the people in her party don't support the minimum wage at all, let alone increasing it. I think that that's part of what will improve the quality of life, making sure that there's affordable health care, trying to make sure that employers treat their employees fairly. All of those things are really critical to a management work environment that works for people. Again, 40 years of being in business. I know how this works. I live it every day. I run a town. I understand what it's going to take to make this state good for everybody, not just people like me or people who work in the legislature who get enormous benefits when I don't think they should get them as part-time employees. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Ziobron.
Thank you. So I think that's one of the most distinct differences between myself and my opponent. I view this job as a calling, as public service, and I've dedicated 100% of my time serving my constituents. Unlike my opponent, who plans on keeping his job as first selectman in Essex, and still having a hand in his very successful Kudos business, how can you do it all? It's just math. There's not enough hours in the day. Someone is going to get shortchanged. It's either going to be the citizens of Essex or it's going to be the Senate district. It's just math. It's not rhetoric. I have done as much as I can do at the Capitol, working in a bipartisan way. The one thing we did do as Republicans in our proposal was increase funding for the Care for Kids program. What is Care for Kids? It's a critical program that provides high-quality child care to working poor families. We increased the funding by $30 million. Not just a little adjustment on a line item. It was a thoroughly investigated program so that we can help those help themselves and give them a hand up. I will continue to support those kinds of policies based on research and input from my constituents, and I hope to have that opportunity again in the state Senate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And your rebuttal, Mr. Neddleman.
So if the state constitution wanted legislators to be full-time, they would have made them full-time. I think that there are a lot of people who believe that the longer they're in session, the more damage that they do, so they never wanted to make them full-time. It's amazing to me that we stretch a 4-month job into a full-year career. I've had a lot of people wonder how I do what I do. It's called a high-level work ethic. I work all the time, not happy in my family, but I really do.
We're going to have to cut you off right there. Thank you. And your rebuttal, Ms. Ziobron.
Thank you. Again, I am doing this job because I'm passionate and dedicated to my constituents. That's it. And you're right. If the Constitution should be changed, they didn't envision certainly the amount of legislators. Maybe we need to talk about doing something as a unicameral legislature. I'm happy to have that debate at the Capitol. But I'm not going to stop my work ethic. I'm not going to stop giving 100% for my community, and you are my only focus.
Thank you, Ms. Ziobron.
In an age of seemingly constant gun violence, many Connecticut citizens have shown a fierce advocacy for gun control legislation. Do you agree with this or disagree? What is your position on gun control, and how will you enact policies to support your stance in the Senate? Starting with Ms. Ziobron.
Thank you. So that's certainly another very important topic for our state, especially in the recent crisis that was just witnessed just a few days ago. I listen with both ears. In fact, when I went to the state legislature, my very first time speaking on the floor of the House was on SB 1160. It was a very emotional time for all folks involved in that conversation. And the gun control that was passed was done so in a bipartisan way. But I actually voted against 1160. And I voted against it because I have thousands of law-abiding legal gun owners who are extremely concerned about being misrepresented at the Capitol. And that has continued over the last 4 years with a number of different bill proposals that have started, certainly in Connecticut. I know people like to confuse my support of the Second Amendment as somehow not caring about kids. I reject that strongly. It's disgusting, that kind of an allegation, especially as the mother of 2 children. But I do feel very strongly in the Second Amendment. I'm going to continue to stand up for law-abiding citizens, and I want to see criminals prosecuted. I have a stack of gun laws here in my binder that are not fully prosecuted. Crimes like not storing a firearm safely or stealing assault weapons, they need to be enforced.
Thank you, Ms. Ziobron. Mr. Neddleman.
So this is an emotional weekend. I'm Jewish, and what happened in that synagogue is horrendous. And it's hard because I am a gun owner, but my opponent seems to always, in every case, side with the gun owner and never understands the plight of the victim here. It is common sense that the more guns you have, the more likely it is people are going to get killed. We have a president who the first word out of his mouth was, well, if every place that had an assembly like this had an armed guard, these are idiotic ideas. Giving teachers guns, idiotic ideas. I'm the chief of police in Essex, and I understand what the police go through for training. None of this makes any sense to them. My opponent was voted Legislator of the Year by CCDL. That's great. I'm glad you appreciate that. That is a badge of honor to wear for some, and not necessarily a badge of honor to wear for everybody. I believe in common sense gun control, gun regulations. Background checks need to be tightened up. The gun show loophole needs to be closed. We need to make sure that people who own guns are not crazy. And I sign gun permits. I'm the one whose name goes on them. Thank you. You're very, very mature. I take my job really seriously.
Thank you, Mr.
And I want to make sure that only normal people get guns.
Thank you, Mr. Needleman. Ms. Chevrolet, your rebuttal.
Thank you very much. So, as somebody who signs those forms, you know there is a significant background check that goes along with that. But we should be absolutely enforcing the laws we have. So I'm going to start reading you some gun laws that are not enforced. Again, safe storage requirement as respect to minors. 100% of those cases were thrown out, never prosecuted. Illegally transporting an assault weapon. Again, 100% of those cases in 2017 not prosecuted.
Thank you, Ms.
I can
Chevrolet.
go on and on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Needleman.
Yeah, one more time, siding with the gun owner and never understanding what's going on in this country with the victims of gun violence. I talked to an NRA instructor recently, and we sort of came to common ground that maybe in Connecticut recertification makes sense beyond just mailing in your $25 to the state to get your gun permit renewed. We need to make sure in Connecticut that we follow the laws, but after Newtown, the bill she's talking about is the
Thank you, Mr.
Newtown
Needleman.
bill, that gun violence has gone down.
Thank you, Mr. Needleman.
Connecticut is faced with many environmental issues, including an unhealthy and polluted Long Island Sound, issues with brownfields or contaminated sites such as the Unilever factory here in Clinton, and a dependence on natural gas and petroleum. In your opinion, what is the #1 environmental issue facing our state, and what will you do to mitigate it? That's for Ms. Ziobron, sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Needleman. My apologies.
So I think that there are a couple of things that we need to do because we have so many towns that are waterfront. We know that global warming is a real fact of life. The storms that we've had in the last 15 years keep getting worse. It was very nice to hear Jesse a little while ago sound like the one Republican that gets that global warming is right, and I know he's in the solar industry, and I applaud that. I certainly would not have passed the budget that took money out of the Green Bank, which is one of the ways that we incentivize renewable energy. We need to make sure that our communities are resilient, that there's money to withstand storms that are coming our way on a yearly basis or multiple storms in a year, and we need to make sure that we do everything in this state to protect ourselves from the national laws that are changing, that are hurting Connecticut, New York, and the states around us. We need to band together and make sure that we sue those states that are polluting our air. And I also think that every dollar we can invest to incentivize green energy is the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Ziobron.
So thank you. So certainly I think coastal resiliency is certainly an issue, especially along this area. And we've worked to address some of those issues when we talked about SB 7 and also the Connecticut State Blue Plan, which is currently in the process of being finalized and presented to the legislature. We also have other issues like coordinated storm response. I think that's an important issue that we should be working together to make sure it's coordinated with our small towns. recycling and bulky waste. I made myself available to go and tour our recycling facility in Hartford so I could understand exactly what it is and how we can encourage recycling in our communities. I serve as one of a proxy for the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, which is a federal commission that regulates fishing regulations from Florida to Maine. And we see species changing. It's not just one person who believes that we certainly do have a problem with global warming. There's a lot of different folks. That's not a partisan issue. And there's a lot of good people working on potential solutions, but also doing the proper planning and reporting necessary to inform a legislature. Unlike my opponent, I don't think I know everything. I want to understand and listen to others when I'm hearing problems. So sometimes that means listening is the most important job as a legislator, and that's something I take very seriously, and that's why I've always had a passion to serve on the Environment Committee in the legislature.
Thank you. Thank you, rebuttal, Mr. Needleman.
So I'm really proud that I was endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters in the state of Connecticut, and they have been actually the only dark money group supporting me as opposed to the $1,150,000 coming into the state from out of the state supporting my opponent. I am in the emergency management room when there's a storm. I'm not sitting there talking about it. I'm not running around trying to figure out what to do. It's my job to deal with that every single time, and we need to do more.
Thank you, Mr. Needleman. And Ms. Ziobron, your rebuttal.
So thank you. I am very proud of my environment record. I sat down with legislators across the aisle to figure out how to save our state park system. As a Republican, I was willing to put my money where my mouth was and actually do something about it, which is why when you look at the Passport to Park program, which is why I got a legislative award from the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters in 2017, I'm going to continue to work on those things. I'm passionate about our park system, and it's something I'm going to keep working on. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you win this election, what is the first issue or piece of legislation you are going to tackle in office? What issue are you most passionate about addressing? We're starting with Ms. Ziobron.
Thank you. The one issue I'm so passionate about is our state budget and our fiscal crisis in Connecticut. We have got to give confidence to our business community and our residents. It's only with that confidence can we turn our state around. We don't necessarily need legislation to start making that progress. For instance, we can change the rules on the very first day of session and require a Ways and Means Committee. That's something I will continue to push for, and that is the number one thing that I plan on doing, but I don't have to wait to have bills to do that. I can simply continue to work in a bipartisan way with leadership to make that happen. We have got to really solve it. We have also got to start developing that plan for paying down our $100 million unfunded pension liability, and that can start when we take the recommendations of the Fiscal Accountability and Economic Commission that was formed and staffed and volunteered by top business leaders in the state, including those like Stanley Black & Decker, Jim Smith from Webster Bank, and others. If they came up with a plan, we should be fully debating that plan in an earnest way in the legislature instead of having a public hearing, which happened last year, while the union folks were there booing them and treating them in a disrespectful manner in our chamber. That is unacceptable. We need solutions. We need to listen to each other. And once we start doing that, we can work together to turn the state around. I'm not ready to give up on Connecticut.
Thank you, Ms. Ziobron.
Yeah, so I think that we probably agree that the most pressing issue and the thing that needs to be addressed first is the budget. And I honestly believe that even ahead of the technicalities of how we deal with the budget, we need to look at that Commission on Fiscal Stability. We need to develop a plan for economic growth in the state of Connecticut. Again, you're not going to cut or tax your way out of this problem. The state has to figure out how to keep people that are my age and attract people that are young into the state to make sure that our population stabilizes, business development occurs correctly, we lighten the the regulatory burden on businesses and municipalities and allow our economy to grow. And I believe that my experience as a business owner and a municipal leader actually will be a lot more valuable in the legislature, because there are few, if any, people that come to the table knowing what I know and doing what I've done. 40 years in the business community in Connecticut, and another 15, 16 years as a selectman and first selectman. And I know how to bring that experience to bear in the state legislature. We need an advocate for both towns and businesses that has actually done stuff, not that's legislated. This is not about only legislating. We need active voices for growth and development in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Neddleman. Ms. Shepherd, rebuttal.
So again, you know, we need, when you go to the Capitol, you spend a lot of time listening and learning. You don't just look at a budget, at least I don't, and decide, okay, let's take some from there and take some from there without really knowing what you're doing. It's not just as important what to cut, it's what not to cut. And sometimes you gotta spend a lot of time on road trips. I visited Southbury Training School to figure out how we could save dollars. I have visited 10 prisons across the state to understand why we had a $100 million no-bid contract. Those are the things I'll continue to do.
Thank you. Mr. Neddleman.
So then I would argue that, of course, you have to listen, but I would be going to the legislature with way more experience than almost every other legislator there. Because I've been in the world that I've been in business and in government, I come to the table experienced already. I know where the budget has weaknesses, I know where the budget has strengths, and I do know what needs to be done to get us out of the mess. I'm not a small ball player. I play to win and to fix the problems.
Thank you. And now we're going to allow the candidates their 90-second closing statements, starting with Ms. Ziobron.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you both for hosting and all the behind-the-scenes work that you've done to make this possible. And I also want to thank those for attending. This is our 4th debate with each other. I think we can both kindly say that we're probably glad that we're done. But you know, it has been a wonderful experience for our communities up and down the district to really hear from us firsthand. The single greatest issue facing Connecticut is our fiscal crisis. We're facing a $4.5 billion budget deficit, and I won't mince words. Our state is sick, and we need to deliver tough medicine. The solutions won't be easy, but just as I have done for the last 6 years in Hartford, I am ready to work with other problem solvers, no matter their party affiliation. This is my 4th election for state office, and by far the most negative I've ever experienced. My campaign has been nearly outspent, nearly 4-to-1, much of it with negative campaigning that most voters tell me they dislike. Indeed, a day does not go by without a friend or a neighbor sharing another misleading flyer or unflattering picture produced by my opponent. I do my best to take such things in stride so that I can remain focused on my dedication to public service. Talking with tens of thousands, my campaign has knocked on over 16,000 doors about your hope and ideas for Connecticut. If elected, voters can rest in the knowledge I will walk into the Capitol on day 1, put my skill and experience on the budget to work, and I will address the flawed budget process immediately. Please, I ask for your vote. Let's turn it around.
Thank you, Ms.
So I actually believe that Melissa does her best. I believe that all the legislators that we have up in Hartford do their best. I'm afraid that their best has not been and is not good enough to carry us out of the problems that we have. This has turned into a negative campaign. $1,150,000 coming into the state. I've been accused of spending my own money, but I'm not getting money from the Koch brothers or from people out of the state trying to turn this state into something that it's not. The mail pieces that have gone out on your behalf and probably on the behalf of other people who are running for state office have been horrendous. A couple of them have been insulting and attacked my character, not my votes. My record stands for itself, and I will live and die by my record. You know, this has taken a bad turn, and the last couple of mail pieces have been so offensive and so negative that I wish we could roll them back, but we can't. I don't know when they're going to stop. They have $550,000 left to spend to hurt people who are running, who are putting their lives on the line. This has damaged my family, it's damaged me, and I'm offended by it. If elected, I'm going to put all the passion and effort that I brought to every job I've ever had into helping solve the problems that have been created by bad gubernatorial administrations and terrible legislators. This is why I'm running. At 67 years old, I want to fix it for my kids and my grandkids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neddleman. Thank you. On behalf of the Morgan Political Club, I would like to offer our sincerest thanks to the candidates for volunteering their time to come before us and exchange their ideas and opinions, as well as treating the debate with professionalism and respect. Thank you to the audience as well for coming to listen to opposing perspectives and ideas. I urge you to make sure you and your family, friends, and colleagues get out and come vote on November 6th. We hope you have become more informed on the candidates and their positions, and we continue to encourage everyone to participate in our democracy. Thank you and good night.
This video provided as a public service by Kirk Carr, the Kirkster. Thank you for watching.